So this week's parsha, Parshas Balak, is quite an unusual parsha in many ways. But first of all, in terms of the context, because in the end of Parshas Chukas, after Sichon Melech HaAmori refused to let us pass through his land, Klal Yisrael conquered the Eretz Moav, and then they were pointed derech Habashon. And when Oig was also Yoitzel Likrosam LaMilchama, they conquered the Eretz of Oig, and the parsha concludes with a pasuk Vayisu b'nei Yisrael vayachanu ba'arvois Moav me'ever liyarden Yerechoi. So they are now on the outskirts of Moav. And here begins our parsha, Vayar Balak ben Sipor es kol asher osa Yisrael lo emori. So, as opposed to other events that are recorded in the Torah that Klal Yisrael themselves witnessed and experienced, this whole story that happens in Parshas Balak happened behind our backs. We were in Arvos Moav. There was no way that we should know what was happening in Moav, that Balak had this long, maso matan with Bilaam until he, in the end, agreed to curse, and in the end, he didn't come out of curse, it came out of blessing. So, as far as our story is concerned, after the end of Parshas Chukas, Vayachanu ba'arvois Moav me'ever liyadni Yerechoi, the next thing is what appears in the end of our parsha. After Vayokom Bilam Vayelech Vayoshev Lemkoimoi V'gam Balak Holach Ledarkoi, which is something we weren't aware of. The next thing happens, Vayeshev Yisrael Bashitim Vayochel Ha'om Liznois Es Bnois Moav. Chazal tell us that this was really Atzas Bilam, but all this we didn't know, l'chora. We just went from Arvos Moav, and we went to Shittim, and then Vayechelom Lizna says Bnois Moav. So the Gemara in Bava Basra actually says Moshe on Daf Yudalid, Moshe Kosav Sifroi U Parshas Bilam ve'Iyov. Moshe wrote his sefer, referring to the Chamisha Chumshei Torah. He also wrote Parshas Bilam, and he also wrote the sefer of Iyov. So you see that this parsha is really different than all other parshas in the Torah, and therefore it's a special chiddush that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote Parshas Bilam. And even after we say that he did so, it's still not considered sifroi, not considered his sefer. It's considered something that's outside of his sefer. Rashi says Parshas Bilam nevu'asoi u'mesholov Afal pi she'einon tzorchei Moshe v'soirosoi v'seider ma'asov. Einam tzorchei toirosoi is really something that needs to be explained. We spoke about it some other time, because how can it be? It's einam tzorchei toirosoi. But what he says that it's not included in seider ma'asov, l'chorah the pshat is, because this whole event happened outside of the Jewish encampment. It happened in Eretz Moav while they were in Arvos Moav, and we weren't involved in this in any which way, and therefore it's really not part of Seder Ma'asov. But nevertheless, it's interesting that in the Haftarah it says, Ki helisicho me'eretz Mitzrayim. Psukim in Micha. Ki helisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim umi beis avodim fidi sicha. The Rebbeinu Shalom is saying, "Va'eshlach lefonecha es Moshe, Aaron uMiriam. Ami zechorno." Remember, ma yoatz Balak melech Moav uma ono oisoi Bilam ben Baor min hashitim ad hagilgol leman das tzidkois Hashem. So min hashitim va'ad hagilgol means, as the Mefarshim say, that in spite of the fact that they sinned in Shittim, he nevertheless brought them to Eretz Yisrael, beginning with their arrival at Gilgal. That's the min hashitim va'ad hagilgol. But what's Amis chorno ma yoatz Balak melech Moav ma ona oisei Bilaam. We're saying Amis chorno. Remember, I mean, usually we could only remember something that we once knew. I mean, these are things that we experience and we're told to remember. Here we're talking about remembering something that we actually never experienced, because the Yoatz Balak and the Ona Oisoi Bilam was all behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, probably we must say that we're meant to learn and internalize the parsha to the extent where it becomes a memory. And Parshas Bilam becomes a core experience in Jewish history, in spite of the fact that we didn't experience it firsthand. But probably in order to get that, it's not enough to be mashlim Parshi Yosef Imat Sibur Shnayim Mikra ve'echot Targum, but we have to find ways to connect with this parsha. Okay, so the mice is like this. You know, the truth is that this is a parsha that even on the level of Pshutei Shel Mikra, it's very hard to understand. One of the strangest things, obviously, in this parsha is Vayiftach Hashem es pi ha'osain. Yeah, the Mishnah says in Avos, Perikei Mishnah Ches, counts this pi ha'osain as one of the 10 things that were created Erev Shabbos Bein Hashmoshes. As the Rav says, pi ha'osain Bein Hashmoshes nigzar oleha shetedaber im Bilaam. However, it's totally not clear what this nest was for. It would seem that the talk of the Osain accomplished absolutely nothing, because it's true that in the beginning, when the Ziknei Moav and the Ziknei Midyon came to Bilaam as shluchim of Balak to ask him to curse the Jews, it says, "Vayomer Elokim el Bilaam lo yisei lechimon, lo yisoyer esaham ki baruchu." But afterwards, when Balak sent Sorim Rabim v'nichbadim me'ela, it says, "Vayovoy Elokim el Bilaam laila, vayomer Eloi im likroi lecha bo anoshim kum lechitom va'ach es hadavar asher adaber elecha oisoi taseh." That's what it says in Pasuk Chof. Then comes the Malach and he gets in his way, l'soton loy, and the Osoin sees the Malach and charboy shlufa biyadoi, and the Osoin moves to the side, but Bilaam hits the Osoin to get it back on the way, and then the Malach goes into the Mishal Hakramim, godim mizeh, and the Osoin sees, and it pushes towards the wall, and Bilaam hits it again, and then the Malach Hashem is oimid b'mokim tsar, asher ein derech lintois yomun usmoil, and the Osoin again sees, vatirbat tachas Bilaam, and he hits it again, and then it says, "Vayiftach Hashem es pi ha'osain." Vatomer leBilaam, "Meo sisi lecha ki kisani ze sholish rigolim." Vayomer Bilaam la'osain ki es alalt bi, lu yesh cherev biyodi ki ata haraktich. Vatomer ha'osain al Bilaam alo yonoichi asoincha asher ochavta olai me'oidi ad hayom hazeh haskin iskanti lasis kadavar hazeh vayomer loi. And then vayigal Hashem es eini Bilaam vayares malach Hashem nitzov baderech v'charbo shlufa biyodi vayikoid vayishtachu la'apov. No, and then the Malach has this whole conversation with Bilaam, and he tells him that, how come you mistreated your donkey? And Bilaam explains, and then it says, "Vayomer Bilaam el Malach Hashem chatasi ki lo yodati ki ato nisav lekrasi badorach va'ato im ra beinecha." If this is not, if you think that this is wrong, ashuvali, I'll return. So what happens now? Vayomer Malach Hashem al Bilaam lechim ha'anoshim. You can go. Ve'efes is hadavar asher adaber elecha oisei tedaber. Vayelech Bilaam im sorei Balak. So it comes out that this whole drama with the Malach and the Yosin, nothing came out of it. Nothing changed. Bilaam continues to go with under the same conditions that HaKadosh Baruch Hu already in Pasuk Chav told him, lechim ha'anoshim, kum lechitom, The same thing happens now. So what was this whole thing about? Really, the question needs to be asked earlier, because in Pasuk Chof Aleph and Chof Beis, it says, Vayokom Bilaam ba'boiker, vayachboish es hasoinoi, vayelech im sorei moyov, vayichar af Elokim ki hoylechu, vayisyatzav malach Hashem b'derech l'soten loy. But in Pasuk Chof, right before this, it says, Vayovoy Elokim el Bilaam laila, vayoyim Eloi im likroi lecho, bo ha'anoshim kum leich itom. So why 2 psukim later does it say Vayichar af Elokim ki hoylechu? So they bring in the name of the Goyen that he said that there's a difference between itom and imam. When people are going together, you're talking that each one of them should have a different goal, a different reason for going. And in a case like that, we use the word itoi. Only when they have a common goal do we use the word imoi. It doesn't really say in the Koil Eliyahu it doesn't say what the source for this is, but I say that in the beginning of Parshas Lech Lecha it says Vayelech Avram kasher diber elov Hashem. Vayelech itoi loit. So loit Avada didn't identify with the Dvar Hashem, and he wasn't going for that reason. And you see, the pasuk uses the term Vayelech itoi lois. He's going for his own reasons, but he's going with Avram. So also in Parshas Vayera by the Akedah, it says Vayashkem Avram ba'boiker, Vayachboish es chamoiroi, Vayikach eshnei na'orov itoi. The Na'orim were not going for the same reason that Avram Avinu was going. They were going itoi. On the other hand, when Avram Avinu says to his Na'orim, Shvu lochem poi im hachamor, he uses the term im. And Chazal Takedarshan, am hadoim l'chamor. So you see that im really represents diamond. Yeah, so maybe that's the source, that im is used when there's a common goal or there's some commonality. So the thing is like this. L'chara, so the as I'm saying, the Goyen doesn't bring a source for this, but he says that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him, Im likroi lecha bo anoshim, kum lech itom in pasuk Chav, the pshat is itom, but not imam, meaning he shouldn't identify with a cause. He shouldn't want to curse the Jews. He should just go itom. And l'charazay shteitach in Rashi, because Rashi says im likroi lecha, im hakriya shelcha, v'savur ato liteil aleha schar. In other words, you're going in order to be rewarded. So it's mefurish that he was given permission to go, but for the sake of being paid, not for the sake of cursing Klal Yisrael. However, the next pasuk says, "Vayikach Bilaam, Vayokom Bilaam ba'boiker, vayachboish es hasoyne, vayelech im sorei moyav." So he did identify with the cause, and therefore Vayichar af Hashem ki hoylechu. This is what they bring from the Goyen. Just want to add that when Rashi says in the Dibra Maskul vayachboish es hasoyne, Rashi says Mikan sha'asino mikalkeles es hashura. Which means he wasn't just going for the money. He was going because of the sinner. So it's sinner mekalkelis is ashura. So he was really going imam and not just itam. So now after this whole dialogue with the Osain and with the Malach, it says Vayoyme Malach Hashem el Bilam Lech ima anoshim. In Pasuk Lamed Hey, it says that he asks the Malach, should I go back? And he tells him no. He tells him, so here it says im. The Goyen doesn't discuss this pasuk. But it's clear that we have to say that even though in the beginning he was only given permission to go itam, but now he's being given permission to go imam, which means now he's given permission to go even for the same cause as they're going. In other words, with the same intention. We're having a common goal. So really, Rashi says, on Leich Ima Anoshim, B'derech she'odam roitze leilech moilichin oisei. So the source of this Rashi is in the Gemara in Makis Daf Yud, where it says, Omar Rabba bar Rav Huna, va'amri lo Omar Rav Huna, Rabbi Lozer, min ha-Torah, u'min ha-Neviim, u'min ha-Ksuvim. We have rayas from Torah, Neviim, and Ksuvim, that, b'derech she'odam roitze leilech moilichin oisei. Diksiv, min ha-Torah, diksiv, loi seilech imoem, uksiv, kum leich itom. So, it's interesting, the Gemara actually is bringing the pasuk Chof that says kum leich itom. According to, but Rashi moved this drasha to pasuk Lamed Hey, where it says imam. So, according to this guy, and it makes a lot of sense, because the Rebbeinu Shalom Chatchila told him, don't go, the Rebbeinu Shalom Chatchila told him to go itam. And then he went imam, and then the Malach interfered, and the Osain interfered, right? Only after this whole ordeal did Hashem say, did the Malach say in the name of the Rebbeinu Shalom that you can go imam. This is from where Rashi says we learn that b'derech she'adam roitze leilech moilichin oisei, that even though the Chatchila he was told not to do it, but since he pushed hard and he really wanted, the door was open for him to do as he shouldn't have done. That's from where we learn b'derech she'adam roitze leilech moilichin oisei. So I don't know how to be meyashiv it with the Gemara, because the Gemara does bring it from the first pasuk. Maybe Rashi had a different girsa in the Gemara, that the Gemara didn't bring pasuk Chof, but the Gemara actually brought pasuk Lamed Hey, which is what Rashi brings. But Al Kopanim, the Rashi that we have stems with the Goin. But after all this, we still don't understand, since in the end of the day, we see that Bilaam really wanted to go. Im ha'anoshim. He identified with the cause. And a sinner was Mekalkalas Ashura. So the Rebbeinu Shalom knew all along that this is what Bilaam wants, and this is how he's going to go. So what was the Pia Osain was Nivra Be'erev Shabbos Bein Hashmoshes, in order that it be able to talk to Bilaam. If in the end of the day, he's given permission to go imam, because that's really B'derech she'adam roitze leilech. So what did we need all this for? So, it's interesting that in the Aderes Eliyahu, which is a chibur from the Goyen HaChumash, and the longest shtiklach are in Parshas Balak. He has 6 different ma'aduras in Nigla and Anister on Parshas Balak. And over there in the Ma'adura Tinyona, Ois Lamed, it says B'zeh Loshen, Ba'asora nisyonos nisnase Bilaam harasha. Ubekulam lo yishgiach b'hem. He wasn't nispol from the asora nisyonos. Ha'achas b'pam harishona shebo hashluchim. Shamalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo yisrael echimoim. Habeis b'pam hashniya she'amalei im likroi lecha. V'davke im likroi v'lo lekalol. And he goes on, and vatir batza osoin, and vayiftach Hashem es pia osoin. That's the 6th. The 7th is vayigal Hashem es einei Bilaam. The ches is b'mizbechois harishonos. The b'mois baal. The tes is b'roish hapisgo, and the 10th is b'roish hapoor hanishkof al pnei hayishimoy. And then he says that these 10 nisyonos that Bilaam was tested with are Keneged Asora Nisyonis She'omad Avram Avinu Olav Hasholem Bekulam. Ubilam Harasha Over Al Kulam. V'lo Yishgiach Be'em Klal. Ukeneged Kain Ksiv Kan Ese Pa'am Malach Hashem. So I mean, that's in fact that we're comparing and contrasting Avram Avinu to Bilam Arosha. We find that already in Chazal, because Rashi says on the pasuk, "Vayachboish es hasoinoi, mikan she'asina mekalkeles es hashuro shechov hashu ba'atzmoi." Amar Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Rosha kvar kodomcha Avram Aviem, shenema vayashkem Avram Aboike vayachboish es chamoiroi. So also in the Mishnah, as we know, in Ovis Perek Hey, that contrasts the Talmidim of Avram Avinu to the Talmidim of Bilam Arosha. But I haven't found anywhere a source for this going that just like Avram Avinu was tested with Asara Nisyonis, so also Lahavdil Bilam Arosha was tested with Asara Nisyonis. But the Mashmos Advarim is that Zeh Le'uma Zeh Osa Elokim, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu tested Avram Avinu in order to bring out his righteousness, in order to bring out his tzidkis, by being oimid ba'asor nisyonis and overcoming the asor nisyonis, even though Avada the Rebbeinu Shalom is Golav Yadu Lefonov, the Madrega of Avram Avinu, but he brings it out through nisyonis, as the Ramban says and others. So also HaKadosh Baruch Hu tested Bilam in order to bring out his riches through the testing him 10 times. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, put up all kind of roadblocks and made it difficult. And nevertheless, he overcame all those difficulties and he moved on to do evil. He was tested in terms of his commitment to evil. Yes, so the Esen Nisyonis, that Avram Avinu was Nisnase on one hand, and the Esen Nisyonis, that Bilam was Nisnase on the other hand, they brought out, the bane of Avram Avinu and Bilam Arosha. But, to us, the whole shidduch of Avram Avinu and Bilam Arosha, seems like a very strange shidduch. Avram Avinu was the first of the Avos Hein Amerkava. Bilam Arosha, Chazal, describe him as a lowlife in every which way. So, how are they b'chlal in the same category that we should be making chilukim, and we should be saying, so what's the difference between Avram Avinu and Bilam Arosha? And we should say that he was tested 10 times. He was tested 10 times. So what is it about? Obviously, we know very little what it's about. But I say we really look at and we see the final product. And from that point of view, Avada, Avram Avinu, and Lahavdil Bilam are polar opposites. But Chazal are talking about the potential. And as far as that's concerned, it seems that they were actually pretty much the same. In other words, so really Bilam is probably the most enigmatic biblical figure. On one hand, he's ready to kill an entire nation with the power of speech just for money and covet. He's like a mercenary. He's a killer for pay. And Chazal and Sanhedrin are marich how he was a lowlife in every area. But on the other hand, he's a Navi, to the point that Chazal say in Sifri, in the end of his Bracha, on the pasuk V'loi kom Navi oid b'Yisrael k'Moshe, the Gemara, the Brisa says b'Yisrael loi kom, Aval ba'umas ha'olam, come. And who is that? Ve'ezezeh Bilam ben Bar. So he saw actually what Yeshaya, Yirmiyah, Yecheskel didn't see. He's on the Madrega of Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Adon HaNeviim. He sees till Achris Hayomim. It's noteworthy that the Lashon HaRambam in the beginning of Perek Yud Aleph, Mihilchis Melachim, Umilcham Oisein, the Rambam says, HaMelech HaMoshiach, Osid La'amoid U'lahachzir Malchus David L'yoshna, v'chulei. V'chol mi she'enei ma'amin boy, or she'enei mechake l'biyosoi, loy b'shar ha-neviim bilvad hu koifer. Because in the other Nevi'im, they talk about the future redemption. Ela b'Torah u'b'Moshe Rabbeinu. he's considered a kofer in Torah and a Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah. So why? Shaharei Torah he idolav. Shenemar v'shav Hashem alekecha shvuscha v'richamecha v'shav kibetzcha v'goymer. Ve'elu hadvarim mefurashim b'Torah heim koilulim kol hadvarim sheneemru al yedei kol haneviim. Then the Rambam says, Af b'parshas Bilaam nemar. V'sham niba b'shnei ha-Mashiachim b'Mashiach harishon shehu David she'Yoshias Yisrael mi'atzareim u'b'Mashiach ha'achron she'omed b'bonav she'Mashiach bonav b'achroina. V'sham u'omer ar'enu v'loi ato ze David ashurenu v'loi korov ze ha-Melech HaMashiach dorach koichav miyankiv ze David v'kom shevet mi'Yisrael ze Melech HaMashiach. So it comes out that in spite of the fact that the Iker redemption is something that appears in Parashas Nitzavim, v'shav Hashem alekecha shvuscha. But the personal Messiah doesn't appear in the Torah, only in Parashas Bilaam, because he was Niba in the first Mashiach, which is David, and in the last Mashiach, which is Mashiach ben David, that will take us out of the Golus. So this is something that we have from Nevuas Bilaam, obviously, which was incorporated into Torah, B'dvar Hashem. Yeah, and so it also says and that's the Mechayev of to be Mamin boy. And so it says in the Pirish Mishnayos and Perik Chelik that the Iker Hayud Beis is Misha Estapik boy, v'chulei. Kofar b'Torah, sheyied boy b'Torah b'Ferush, b'Parshas Bilaam. That the Torah was made on Mashiach in Parshas Bilaam. So this is, so Parshas Bilaam, it teaches us one of the pillars of our faith, yeah. Agav, I just want to say a Maimar Mosge because the Welt says in the name of the Briskerov that Kol HaKoifer boy, Kol Mi She'enei Maimin boy, Oy She'enei Mechake Libiyosoi is considered a Koifer. They say that the Briskerov said, I can't take Achrayas, that the Briskerov said that you see in the Rambam that even somebody that believes that Mashiach will come, but he's not waiting for him, not anticipating his coming immediately, is considered a koifer in the Iker Hayud Beis, which is a dramatic chumrah, obviously. And we know that one should be mitzapeh Yeshua. The Gemara says in Shabbos that one of the three things will be asked when we come to the other world is tzipisa Yeshua. But to say that one is a koifer if he's not mitzapeh l'biyosai is a tremendous chumrah. So I really have a suggestion that when the Rambam says Einoi mamin boy or Einoi mechaka l'biyosai, it means that he thinks he came already. He's not mechaka l'biyosai. In other words, one can believe that in Mashiach and he believes that he came already. Yeah, which is the Rambam is coming la'afuki the Christians. So he says Kol mi she'einoi mamin boy or Einoi mechaka l'biyosai is considered a koifer. Anyway, that's a Maimar Hamuzge. So I'm just saying, so it's kind of surprising and puzzling that this prophet that sees until Achris Hayom, he doesn't see the angel that's standing right in front of him and on the way, when even his donkey sees the Malach. So how could that be? How could that be? So the Mishnah in Avos says, Amar lahem, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says to his Talmidim, Tzuu ra'u eizohi derech yeshara sheyidbak ba'odam. What's the straight path that a person should cleave to? Rabbi Eliezer oimer ayin toivim. Rabbi Shua oimer chaver toiv. Rabbi Yossi oimer shochein toiv. Rabbi Shimon oimer haroyes hanoilad. Rabbi Eliezer oimer leiv toiv. Amar lahem, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says to his Talmidim, royani, as Divrei Elazar ben Aroch, who said Leif Tov, Shebechlal Dvorov Divreichem, because everything that the other Talmidim said is included in what he said. Leif Tov includes Ayin Tova, Chaver Tov, Shochin Tov. By the way, Shochin Tov doesn't mean that you should find yourself a good neighbor. It means you should make yourself into a good neighbor to others, just like Leif Tov means you should have a good heart, and Ayin Tov means that you should have a positive outlook on people. Right? So it doesn't mean you should hang around people that will treat you nicely. So the point is, we understand how all these things are included so we understand why this is a derech yeshar sheyidbak ba'adam, but we have no clue how Roya Es HaNoilad fell into this Mishnah. I mean, if Shimon said, Haroya Sanoilad, that's a derech yishora, sheyidbak b'hodam. Roya Sanoilad is a character trait. Roya Sanoilad would seem to us like, I mean, they say the hardest thing to predict is the future. But let's say even that somebody could predict the future, maybe it's a function of Chochmah, like it says in Talmud, that Ezehu Chochom, Haroya Sanoilad. But how could this be a derech yishora, sheyidbak b'hodam? And how are we meant to understand what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, that Bechlal Dvorov of Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch, Divreichem, meaning that Roya Esanoilot is included in a Leiv Tov. How does Leiv Tov include Roya Esanoilot? So probably we should learn that every person really is capable of being a Roya Esanoilot. If he would see the present objectively, he would know that from A will lead to B, and B will lead to C, and so on and so forth. He would see how the present will evolve. The reason that we're not Roya Sanoilad is because we don't see the present. We don't see what's in front of our eyes. And that's because we have, we're meshuchet. We see what we want to see. Our outlook is tainted by our self-interest, and therefore we don't see reality as is. Since we don't see reality as is, we can't see how it will evolve because we don't even know what we're seeing. And therefore, the Mishnah is saying to us that a leiv tov, which means somebody that has the ability to step out of his own self-interest, somebody that's not focused on himself, he could see reality as is, he can be a Roya Sanoilad. It's a derech yishora sheyidbak ba'adam. And it's Bechlal Dvarav Divreichem. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says that if you have a Leiv Tov, you'll be a Roya Sanoilad. You see, by Paroi also it says, Nachesh Yenachesh Ish Asher Kamayni. Yeah, Rashi says that Paroi was able to predict the future, but nevertheless, he didn't see the writing on the wall when he was getting the makkahs one after the other, and he still didn't become convinced that, he can't really hold on to the Jews long term. He didn't see it. Why? Because as long as it wasn't going against his self-interests, he could see it all. But when it's in conflict with his own self-interests, he sees nothing. They say, one little finger, yeah, if it's close to the eye, it blocks all your vision. Whereas and the gear that a person has of self-interest blocks his whole vision. So the Mishnah says in Avis, Perikei Mishnah Chav Beis, Kol mi sheyesh bo shloisha dvarim halolu, hu mitalmidav shel Avram Avinu, u'shloisha dvarim acherim hu mitalmidav shel Bilaam HaRasha. Ayin toiva, a good eye, a positive outlook on people. Ruach nemucha, a humble spirit. Nefesh shveila, not sure how to translate that. Nefesh shveila means like a meek soul. So that's Talmid of Shel Avram Avinu. Ayin ra'ah, a bad eye, a negative outlook. Ruach gvoya is a haughty, arrogant spirit. V'nefesh rechava is like a greedy soul. That's Talmid of Shel Bilaam HaRasha. That's Talmid of Shel Bilaam HaRasha. So somebody that has an ayin ra'ah, a ruach gvoya, and a nefesh rechava, so even divine wisdom becomes by him like a kardoim lachbar boy, and just to serve his self-interest. He doesn't really connect with the divine. He abuses his knowledge. The Goyen writes in Mishlei that Yutes Tes, he writes B'zeh Loshen, HaTorah haba min hashamayim is like rain. Oise pu'ulosa shetatzmiach mashu b'libo. It makes grow what's in your heart. Im liboy toiv tagdil yir'osoi. If you have a good heart, your yira will grow, your yira shemayim will grow. V'im chas v'sholem liboy ra. If your heart is bad, Beliboy shoyresh poire roish velana yikoshel oid bahagoisaiba. The more you learn Torah, the more you'll stumble. V'yagdil hatina beliboy ada shemala sirtoin. So that's the Torah of Talmidei Bilam HaRosha. The Talmidei Bilam HaRosha take all the divine knowledge in a distorted way. So that even though Bilam sees the Yodeh Das Elyon, but it's not only doesn't make him into a better person, but he's Bilam HaRosha. So the Gemara says in Sanhedrin that Bilam stands for Bilaam, without a nation. In other words, he was a gun for hire, right? He had no attachment to any particular nation. He was willing to work for anyone and against anyone. Bilaam. Where does that come from? That comes from the fact that he's an ayin ra, ruach gevoya, nefesh rechava. He's totally wrapped up in his ego, so he has no am. He has just himself. It's all about money and kavod, kabed achabdecha ma'oid. So he has no am, and therefore everything that he takes, he's concentrated on himself and he's focused on himself, and therefore everything that even divine wisdom becomes abused. On the other hand, the Gemara says in Sukkah on the pasuk, Ma yofu po ma'ir bana olim bas nodiv, bitoy shel Avram Avinu, shehoya tchila legerim. Why is becoming a ger have to do with nedivus, with the generosity of spirit? Rashi says, shenedovay liboy lahakir es boyroi. Avram Avinu had the generosity of spirit to recognize his creator. In other words, Avram Avinu's connection with the creator is through Nedivus Halev. And in that way, that type of connection, it transforms a person and makes him into Aves Hein Hein Hamer Kava. On the other hand, Bilam and his Talmidim, they take the divine wisdom in a distorted way, and they can't see anything when it's in conflict with their ego. So from Bilam, we actually learn that the whole creation of the Pia Osain, Be'erev Shabbos Ben Hashmoshes, is to teach us how far the Ratzon, and only the Ratzon, determines your direction. It's not what you know. It's why you know it. It's what you want to do with that knowledge. Knowledge can be an asset, but you can turn it into a liability. If you know it for the wrong reasons, it helps nothing. So, avada meruba midas tova midas peronos, that if our heart is in the right place, so and we're roitze leilech in the right way, so b'derech shodem roitze leilech ma'ilichin oisoi. Okay, having said that,